So Tamriel is a decent sized continent full of various races and a tale or two to tell. Throughout the Elder Scrolls games, with the exception of Arena and the Elder Scrolls Online, we've explored many places such as parts of High Rock and Hammerfell, Morrowind's island of Vardenfell and its nearby island of Solstheim, Cyrodiil, the heart of the Empire, and of course the Great Nord province that is Skyrim. Skyrim is one of my favourite locations in Tamriel, but I think I'm ready to put the Elder Scrolls V down and explore an entirely new province, or maybe even part of an existing one. Hello everyone, I am RedBeakRaven and welcome to an Elder Scrolls 6 discussion video. In this video I'll talk about some of the places I would like to see the next Elder Scrolls set and the reasons why I think they are interesting, but I'll also talk about the other provinces we've yet to explore. So instead of doing a wishlist for the next Elder Scrolls game because there's already 101 of those things on YouTube, I thought I'd just have a discussion about what the setting could be for the next Elder Scrolls game. Okay fine, you can call it a wishlist if you want to. Anyways, let's get into it. So I'll try and talk about only the setting, but don't be surprised if I just jump into story and speculation ideas as well, because wherever the next Elder Scrolls is set, the location will most likely have an impact on what the story will be. Now the theory that the next Elder Scrolls will be set in Velen Wood has been circling the internet for a while now, ever since that memo to Bethesda employees supposedly leaked 2 years ago. There's a few different theories out there surrounding this, and I'm not going to go into it any further, so you can choose to believe or not to believe that it's real. I'm not going to say anything else on that because that's entirely up to you. What I do want to talk about is this Project Greenheart, which is one of the reasons people think that Velen Wood will be the next location in Tamriel that we'll be exploring. So if you're not aware, Greenheart is the name of a city in the province of Velen Wood, the home of the Wood Elves or the Bosmer as they prefer. Naturally, everyone's first thought upon learning this would be, right, the Elder Scrolls 6 is set in Velen Wood. Now yes, it's a possibility because it's one of the provinces that haven't appeared in an Elder Scrolls game, with the exception of both Arena and the Elder Scrolls Online. However, I don't really know if I'm convinced enough that they would make an Elder Scrolls game just set in Velen Wood. And part of the reason for me thinking that admittedly is because I don't find it an appealing location. I mean, I'm sure it would look very nice, it would be a different experience and I would have fun exploring the place, but I don't know if I'd like to spend the entire game there. A large portion of Velen Wood is an uninhabited forest wilderness, there are few Imperial roads to use to travel, and I believe they lack traditional cities. So the Bosmer house themselves in these giant trees, and you can see a good example of this in the Elder Scrolls Online. Now my personal issue with Velen Wood is I don't like the idea of spending most of my time wandering around enormous tree houses. Yes, it would be a nice change of pace, a different, unique experience and whatnot, but one reason I like Morrowind, for example, is not just because it felt alien, but because there are around, 3 or 4, maybe even 5 different types of architecture in the game. You've got Imperial towns, various Dunmer cities, and the old Dunmer strongholds. There's just a nice mixture there. However, they could do another Skyrim and set the game another 200 years in the future, and a lot can change in that time. Now a reason I'm not convinced they'd do just Velen Wood is because Velen Wood is actually quite a small province compared to the likes of Cyrodiil or Skyrim. If Bethesda were to have Velen Wood in their next Elder Scrolls game, then I imagine they'd also include either Elsewhere or the Somerset Isles. That actually sounds more appealing to me, but I could be completely wrong about Velen Wood. Chances are I would thoroughly enjoy a Velen Wood only Elder Scrolls. I always like to remember what some people said about Skyrim. Oh, it's all snow and mountains, it'll be boring. Yes, it was very boring. Okay, so while we're talking about the idea of the Elder Scrolls 6 being set in 2 provinces, how about setting the next one in both Morrowind and Black Marsh? Yes, before you say in the comments below, I know Morrowind has already been done, but it hasn't been done in its entirety. The Elder Scrolls 3 was set in Morrowind, but it was predominantly set on the island of Vardenfell, which we now know has gone to shit thanks to a meteor, which is an entirely different story altogether, but the point is, Morrowind's mainland has essentially gone unexplored by us. As we learn in Skyrim, Morrowind was invaded by the Argonians after Black Marsh seceded from the Empire after the Oblivion Crisis. They managed to devastate a lot of southern Morrowind, but were eventually driven back by House Redorin. So there is the potential for these 2 races to come to clashes once again and set up a story in some way if the Elder Scrolls 6 were to take place there. But the reasons I say set the game in both mainland Morrowind and Black Marsh is because 1, they are 2 of my favourite races, the Dark Elves have such an interesting backstory, and the Argonians are cooler than the Khajiit. I'm sorry, I'm a scales before fur guy. Is that weird? That's probably weird. Have you not read The Lusty Argonian myth? Excuse me. And 2, Morrowind isn't as big anymore without Vardenfell. However, according to the wiki sites, Morrowind is actually the largest province in Tamriel, so maybe mainland Morrowind is enough for us to explore. So if that was the case, then I'd say set the next one in Black Marsh, seeing as though we haven't seen that province much either. Black Marsh sounds to me like one of the more interesting places to explore, as it has been described as a harsh, uncharted, swamp-infested land that is clearly not suitable for those that are not Argonian. And that sounds like they could could make exploring the world a lot more challenging. One of my favourite quotes from the in-game book, the Argonian Account Book 2, is where an Imperial calls the unique rain Black Marsh gets hist piss. The reason for this term is because the rain there is a yellow-brown colour and it smells foul. I doubt this would impact gameplay, but it adds towards my interest in this region. Okay, so maybe having both mainland Morrowind and Black Marsh is not so good an idea, as one of the things I value the most about the Elder Scrolls or even Bethesda Game Studios games in general is their attention to detail, not massive open world spaces. I've said time and time again that I think games may be getting too big for their own good. Plus it would take a lot longer to make, and we all know how long it could take for another Elder Scrolls game to be released, so be careful what you wish for. Honestly though, I would like to see Black Marsh as the setting for the Elder Scrolls 6. That is at the top of my list for now. What comes second on that list is High Rock or maybe Hammerfell. Now I'm not really a fan of desert or jungle based games, but Hammerfell could be interesting. However, due to the geographic similarities between Hammerfell and Elsewhere, there's been some discussions out there where the subject is basically Hammerfell versus Elsewhere. That is actually how I kind of see it, and if what I've read is right, then Hammerfell is a lot less inhabitable compared to Elsewhere. Plus half of Elsewhere is jungle and the other half is desert, but the reason I'd say do Hammerfell on its own is simply because it's bigger than the Khajiit province. Although just because it's uninhabitable doesn't necessarily mean we can't explore it. But if the setting wasn't all of Hammerfell, then you could say that they might be able to fit both that and High Rock in the same game. But like I said, attention to detail, not big land masses. That being said, how about a return to High Rock? Despite the fact they've already done High Rock with Daggerfall, they could still go back once again. In fact, the second Elder Scrolls game wasn't even set entirely in High Rock, nor did it contain all of it. Here is a map of what you could explore, and as you may be able to tell, it's both part of High Rock and a part of Hammerfell. A really good map to show you what is actually left for them to do in the future is one I found on Pinterest. So here we have Daggerfall, then below that there's Redguard, over here is Oblivion, Skyrim above that, Shadowkey on the left, Blood Moon, Morrowind, the Tribunal DLC down here, and then of course the 2 Travels games. So all this greyed out area is for us unexplored territory, obviously minus that on ESO and Arena, so there's still a long way to go before we've explored most if not all of Tamriel, which I think we can all say is the ultimate goal, or at least part of it. So why High Rock? Well, the Bretons and the Orcs are 2 interesting races to me. Orcs are interesting for obvious reasons. They're a unique race with a bloody past and have a completely different way of life. But the reason I find the Bretons more interesting than say the Bosmer and the Khajiit is because of their origins, and they seem to accept the Nords and the Imperials more than they do the Elves, despite their elvish ancestry and their aptitude for using magic. The geography of High Rock itself is interesting. Its landscape is quite diverse, with it having forests, snowy mountains, green hills and even badlands. It's also the location of the Durrani Tower, which is known as the Adamantine Tower, which is fascinating because this is part of a concept in the Elder Scrolls lore which is a very long story to go into, but I'll try to quickly describe it by reading what is written on the Elder Scrolls wiki. The towers are a concept in the Elder Scrolls lore that focuses on the metaphysics surrounding the creation of Mundus. It draws largely from a series of texts known as the New Mantia Intercept, written by Michael Kirkbride, former writer and designer for Bethesda Softworks. According to these texts, a mysterious character named New Hatter addresses a letter to Chancellor Orcato and the Elder Council, warning that the barriers between Mundus and the realms of Oblivion are weakening. The letters foreshadow the invasion of Mehrunes Dagon during the events of the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion and explains the creation and purpose of the Adamantine Tower. The towers are various constructs, both natural and artificial, located all across Nirn. Their existence ensures Mundus remains stabilised as they uphold the barriers between the mortal plane and the realms of Oblivion. Each tower bears a stone that serves as its heart and provides it with stability and power. If a stone is ever removed from a tower or destroyed, the tower becomes inert or deactivated. Should all existing towers fail, Mundus itself would cease to exist. Now I'm going to go into that particular concept a lot more in my next Elder Scrolls 6 discussion video where I'll be talking about the story, but for now I'll just leave that topic there. So High Rock, Black Marsh and Morrowind's mainland are my top 3 wanted locations for the next Elder Scrolls to be set in. Hammerfell could be interesting, but the more I think about it, the less I actually want to go there. Like I said, I'm not a fan of exploring vast deserts, but that doesn't mean I actually don't want to see Hammerfell at a later time. In truth, it is a very interesting province. At the time of Skyrim taking place, Hammerfell is an independent nation after refusing to let the Old Mary Dominion occupy a large area of southern Hammerfell, and they actually managed to keep the elves at bay, but it has left the nation devastated. None of that may matter in the next Elder Scrolls though if they jump ahead another 200 years where the Dominion is nothing but history, which I imagine they will be at some point since the Altmer are just asking for their empire to crumble. What with the civil war in Skyrim, the bad peace between them and what's left of the Imperial Empire, and their questionable alliance with Velen Wood, how can they hope to bring Tamriel Tamriel to its knees. So I've talked about Velen Wood and how I would like to see that alongside elsewhere. I personally think for Bethesda to set the game in one of those regions, they have to do both together, as they are not only similar in size, but they also have a similar situation with their cities. Elsewhere apparently only has a few cities, and most of its settlements are small villages, and they're probably for all those moonsugar farms. That's it, I've got it! The Elder Scrolls 6 is set in elsewhere, and we get to become the biggest skooma dealer in Tamriel. Oh, we'd be living life to its fullest. And then we wake up and realise it was all a dream and we're actually a prisoner with a destiny. Oh, fun times. And of course we have the Somerset Isles. This is actually one of the most requested locations by a lot of fans, and with good reason. It's a province shrouded in mystery as stated by Skyrim's loading screen, and like elsewhere, there's not a great deal of information about it. There's not a lot to go on in regards to its geography, its architectural styles. We don't even know that much of its history. A location with that much mystery surrounding it tends to invite people wanting to find answers. You could say that the Somerset Isles are almost as mysterious as the continent of Akavia, so the mystery alone is enough for me to want to explore the land of the Altmer, but I will stick by what I said about wanting to see High Rock or Black Marsh in the Elder Scrolls 6. However, Morrowind's mainland aside, I would love to see the Somerset Isles after those two locations. We could even get to see the fabled Sigit monks, as their order makes its home on the Isle of Artaeum, which for some reason has a tendency to disappear from time to time. How's that for mysterious? And while talking about mysterious places, who says the Elder Scrolls series needs to stay on Tamriel? How about going all the way to Akavia, the Dragonland? Although personally I don't know if I'd want them to step away from Tamriel just yet, seeing as though we haven't seen roughly 60% of it, probably more to be honest. However, I wouldn't say no to a game being set there. Like I said, as long as we get an Elder Scrolls game, I'm happy. But Akavia would be an entirely different experience altogether. I do actually wonder how many of us would like to see this continent in not just the next Elder Scrolls game, but in future ones. Ha! The 10th Elder Scrolls game could be set in Akavia. Yeah, we could probably see that in 2056 or something. Anyways, I think I've talked long enough about the setting for the Elder Scrolls 6, so just to reiterate, I personally would like to see Black Marsh or High Rock and Orsinium. But of course I wouldn't say no to the other provinces as well. At the end of the day, no matter where they set the next Elder Scrolls game, I'll just be happy that there is another one. If the memo is indeed a fake, then I haven't got the foggiest idea where they may be thinking of going next, which is why I'm not really speculating on where they may choose to set it. Although I will say pay close attention to the Elder Scrolls community, as they do tend to get things right. I remember back before Skyrim came out agreeing with some people that the next one would take place in Skyrim. Then what do you know? The Elder Scrolls 5 Skyrim was announced. Right, now for the more interesting part of this, it's your turn to talk. Let me know in the comments below where you would like to go in the next Elder Scrolls game. Do you have a preference, or are you in agreement with me that you'll be satisfied with just another Elder Scrolls? I think that's probably what most of us think, to be honest. How about the Akavia idea? What do you think about an Elder Scrolls being set on a different continent? Let me know what you're all thinking, and let's have a decent discussion about this, and maybe even discuss some theories as to where they could be thinking of setting the next game, if they haven't decided already. And as I think I've already said, I do plan to do another 2 discussion videos on the Elder Scrolls 6 where I talk about the story, and then I'll probably do an actual wish list, so keep tuned in for them if you are interested. But anyways, that's all from me. Until next time, I'll see you soon.